Well, good evening and welcome to the EcoSchools Wales Back to Basics e-training. Over the next few evenings, I'm going to be running over the key elements of the program and giving you guidance on how to run this in your schools. In this first presentation, we're going to be covering the Eco Committee and the Environmental Review. This is a live e-presentation, so if you're watching this live now, then feel free to ask questions via the Q&A column that you should be visible if you've logged in using Google Hangouts on air. Or alternatively, if you're watching this back at a later date on YouTube, then feel free to add comments in the comments section below, or there will be an email address that I'll be sharing with you at the end of the presentation that will enable you to send the questions and we'll respond back. Hopefully, either way is great, but obviously if you want to do things live or via the comment section, then we can share these ideas and hopefully give people insight as they're viewing it. So, as I said, this presentation will be looking about covering the Eco Committee and the Environmental Review. Now, the EcoSchools program is developed by the Foundation for Environmental Education. It's an international program run in approximately 60 countries worldwide. It's changing on a regular basis. In Wales, it's managed by Keep Wales Tidy, which also runs the Blue Flag for Beaches, which is another fee program which you might be familiar with. The model for EcoSchools is the same globally, and it's based around a 7-step methodology. As this diagram shows, the Eco Committee is the central driving element, and it is one. And these will be the pupils within your school who will be responsible for the environmental review, the two aspects that we're going to be discussing this evening. The committee and then using the review, these guide then the action plan and subsequent measurement through monitoring and evaluation. And this forms a repeating loop. The committee is also responsible for developing the Eco Code and playing a part in raising awareness through informing and involving. All this work should be sustainable within the school and linked to the curriculum. So, as mentioned, we'll be targeting specifically this evening, looking at the Eco Committee and the Environmental Review. When it comes to the Environmental Review, the key criteria that are required are that it needs to be a representation of the whole school, that there is an opportunity for people from the whole school to play a part in it in some form or other. We have a criteria that we stipulate that they should be meeting at least once a half term, but we will encourage that happens, suggest that if possible, encourage that it happens more often. At all stages, and this will be something that will be repeated throughout all the elements, is that any activity taking place amongst the Eco Committee or any of the other aspects needs to be fed back to the whole school. It is not an Eco Committee award, it is an Eco School award, and it is intended to be representative of the whole school. So hopefully we'll be picking up on opportunities that you can celebrate things going on within the whole school. It should have an element of democracy in terms of the selection of the committee. There should be a record kept of meetings, and it should involve the support of the senior management team and governors. Now, all of these key criteria are both guidelines that EcoSchools assessors will use when it comes to awarding a green flag, but also all these criteria should be things that are actually of benefit to help you run these aspects within the school. For example, keeping the record of meetings is not intended to be an extra tick point. It is intended that it will benefit work that you have done in terms of ensuring that you're not sort of duplicating anything that you've done, ensuring that there's continuity between sort of progress you're making. Involving and having support of the senior management team is important because obviously it makes things so much easier in the future. These criteria can appear to be quite narrow, but with any one of them, there is a spectrum that can be looked at. For example, with having an element of democracy, we do come across some schools whereby the whole committee are all elected individuals from the classes, whereas some other cases on the far where it might be, I think of examples, maybe new committee set up in a secondary school whereby you really are taking on board as part members of the committee whoever will be prepared to give their time to the project. However, that doesn't mean that either one is more valid than the other. They are both within the spectrum. If you have a committee elected of all individuals, that's great. It gives you and gives it an element of democracy often when they are elected from the classes. But even if you're taking on board a group of volunteers, it's important that you can elect a chair from within that group or other roles that can be appointed in a democratic fashion. The golden rule when it comes to eco-schools is that what works is the correct way. And this might be how you initially set up the committee in the school, but also that might vary over time. Hopefully that once you are confident with running eco-schools within your school, you'll be comfortable with maybe adapting from year to year. Some years you will get a very positive members elected. Other years you might find that you will go back to them and encourage them to nominate others to be part who aren't necessarily elected. The whole process is very sort of flexible and adaptable. It needs to be sustainable, a very key aspect of it. Another part of the process, which is quite important, is the fact that there are a number of life skills that come from being part of the Eco-Schools programme. And this can be demonstrated via the Eco Committee. In this school, which we're demonstrating on screen, they actually took the roles within the Eco Committee as posts that could be done. So committee members are recruited rather than elected. And as I say, it's good for giving real life experiences, and hopefully these are themes that will come through discussing other key elements. The way you structure the committee is up to you to see how you see fit, but it's about providing pupils have a voice and a part to play, and where possible, allow students to have degrees of freedom. When we come in and assess schools, we would be judging accordingly. Participation is more important than presentation. In this example, pupils were allowed to set up their own office and had making use of an old computer to keep rotas in terms of litter picks, who's doing work in the garden. They're able to use that then to also record what money was made selling potatoes in a school fair. And it's also something which we'll come to at a later date, is it actually serves to promote the activity within the school. So it is, the more you can encourage pupils to be taking part and doing something, that is recognised quite significantly. It is better to have a piece of paper where pupils have been clearly interacting with than to have a pristine sort of document which is not very accessible to the students. It is about sort of, again, giving experiences to the pupils. So once you have a committee, you've set them up within your school and you've got some sort of established format for it. The next step is the environmental review. This helps establish what needs to be improved, but also what's going well in the school. Any environmental review will need to cover the 8 topics of eco-schools. These are litter, waste, energy, water, healthy living, transport, global citizenship, and school grounds. As with the committee, there are key criteria that we bring to when it comes to assessing, but again, are key points which help encourage a good practice. That the pupils are playing a pivotal role in it. Again, there's that feedback to the whole of school, so that they're both opportunities for people outside the committee to maybe participate, but also to be even sort of made aware of the results of the activity. That it can be completed annually, that it cover all 8 topic areas. The reason being for doing that is that it provides a baseline data for monitoring. Whatever you do after this point, the environmental review will give you that starting point and a guide to where you've gone, what progress you've managed to make. If you're starting out from scratch, then it does act as a sort of as a stimulus for developing plans and action points that you're going to work on, which is very important. It can be used yearly to monitor progress, and literally that can be the same document, not having to print off a separate one every year, but that you are using the same document can be to monitor progress. And in having established that sort of baseline data, you can see the difference. And it is a good tool for involving the whole school. It doesn't have to be just the committee performing it. It can be something that's shared with the whole school. In some instances, we've seen schools whereby each topic area has been given out to different classes, thereby breaking down the task of completing it, but also a way of getting more people to be participating throughout the process. We have a template review that we encourage people to use. This covers all the topics and asking the relevant questions. The object is not to tick yes for everything. Some of these questions will hopefully make you consider aspects you hadn't thought of before. This document is available on our website, and I'll be providing details for you how to download this at the end of the presentation. But this document does cover the 8 topic areas, being litter, healthy living, and so forth. And as you'll see, there are a series of yes/no questions. And the idea is that it's not necessarily intended to be, these are all things you should be doing. For example, on energy here, but the 5th one down, it says, are reflector panels fitted behind radiators? If you have radiators which have an area behind them, then this may be something you might consider. However, if you're a new build with underfloor heating, that would not be appropriate and not relevant at all. But it is hopefully provides ideas for what you might look at in terms of trying to identify energy savings through heating or maybe use of electricity. And each section was then sort of complemented by an action points comment box at the bottom, where comments can be made based on what's been discovered, found out during the review. As I said, this document is something that can be used year on year and doesn't have to be a fresh document produced. Once you have a baseline, you can refer to the same thing, but alternatively, you can adapt the format to one suitable to your school. This infant school, for example, got pupils involved to express their views and findings in a non-written way. What the pupils did here was that they took photographs of things they liked about the school and things they would like to change. This was then displayed in the hall for all to see. So they got the pupils participating, even though they were very young within this school, all year 2 and below, by recording things using a camera, which they were competent using. The teacher, in this case, took the document, wrote down what the specifics of what they had said, by then sharing it into 2 sort of groups of these are things we're proud of, these are things we'd like to change. It made it very visual and accessible for both the pupils participating themselves and, when put on the wall, again, a very visual tool to share with the rest of the school. We've seen other examples whereby schools have taken the fire map for the school, was showing the buildings, and I've seen examples of a secondary school where they have used it as a graffiti board and gone and drawn on the map, highlighting things they think, well, these are areas we're proud of, adding clippings from a newspaper to demonstrate this is an area where we had an article in the newspaper when working on this area. It was growing a willow dome, and that was used as an interactive way of doing the review. So there are a number of different ways of doing it, but all provided a tie-in with the key criteria that we mentioned is important. So those are the key criteria when we are talking about the Eco Committee and the environmental review. In tomorrow's presentation, we will be covering the action plan and monitoring and evaluation, and helping to close that loop formed by the review by the committee. The following night, we'll then be covering the Eco Code, the informing, involving, and linking to the curriculum. As already mentioned, if you do have questions, you can share them either by adding, watching this following after present broadcast, you can add comments in the comment box on the YouTube page, or alternatively, you can email ecoschools at eco-schools@keepwalestidy.org. From wherever you are sending the message, we can then either answer immediately, or very often we can let your regional officer know, who can then give you guidance which might be regionally specific and notify you of any initiatives happening within your local authority. In terms of resources, all resources I'll be talking about over these 3 presentations are available on our website, which is www.keepwalestidy.org/ecoschools. And in the resources section of that page, you will find all these resources available to download. Any problems or questions, then again, do sort of contact us via these means. And I hope that this has been a useful tool for hopefully giving you an introduction into ecoschools, or even just giving you a refresh if it's something that you sort of looking to come back into. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll be joining me later this week. Thank you very much.